You guys are all way too excited right now, right? You need to contain your excitement of how excited you are about to be talking about ethics. Woo, ethics, right? So we wanted to cover this though. Did you need to make an announcement? Okay.
They're fixing to start packing up that food, and that's when it gets
Sorry. So yeah, yay ethics, right? Everybody wakes up every day wanting to study and learn more about ethics, right? But some of the feedback that we got in the evaluation forms, again, we really would appreciate you taking some thought into that at the end. We will exchange a goodie for you for that at the end. It's at the end of your binder. But we've had some questions about court cases and some things to just really help people keep out of trouble. And so I was asked to do a presentation on ethics, and yeah, so super exciting, especially after lunch. Woo! Right? What I'm about to teach out of this book, Ethics 101 by John Maxwell. Just as an FYI, I happen to be a certified JMT member, John Maxwell team member or whatever. And the reason I say that is because I can totally teach on this stuff and not get sued. All right. So as we talk about this, right, people get intimidated by the subject or get confused by it. And it seems like this is like so much gray area ultimately of how we be ethical people. So that's our challenge today, and I hope that I can give some value to you in that. So what are ethics? They're principles that govern a person's behavior or the conducting of an activity, right? Ethics also are written principles, right? Remember the idea of boundaries being clear, right? So they're written down. People know where they are, what they look like, and what they say. So ethics are definitely based upon the idea that there is a definitive right and wrong, right? So, you know, sometimes, again, in the whole, in being in the kingdom of God and being in grace, it's kind of like, well, let's not blame anyone. See, ethics, though, is like, no, let's, right? You know, so someone is responsible, right? So, you know, if they were held to a standard and did not do it, that person is responsible for not following through, right? So when you think about ethics, like, tell me an appropriate but unethical profession, right? There isn't one, right? An appropriate, like a good, healthy profession, but is at the same time unethical, right? You can't pick one, right? So, you know, in ministry and business as a counselor or even as an overall Christian, right, this definitely has place in what we do. So a little activity, right? We're not gonna spend too much time on this, but we've got a couple of pages. But in the notes, I would like you guys to kind of write out to the best of your ability. Can you remember 5 of the wealthiest people in the world? Right, just write these down as we go. 5 of the wealthiest people in the world, right? You probably can name a couple. Name the last 5 Heisman Trophy winners. Wes could probably do this. Wes Johnson, right? You know, some sports people will be good at this, but the last 5 Heisman Trophy winners. How about this one? The last 5 winners of Miss America. You know, 1, 2, right? 10 people, and this is my nerdiness coming out, right? I probably could do this, okay, because I am a giant nerd. But name 10 people who have won a Nobel Prize. How about this, right? For those of us that like movies and, you know, are kind of guilty of those impulse buys by those magazines that are at the front of the convenience store, right? Name at least 6 Academy Award winners for both Best Actor and Best Actress. How about the last decade's World Series winners? I could probably get a couple. My wife and I like baseball. So when you think about these questions and the answers to these questions, these are the kind of the Cadillac of achievements for some people. I mean, based upon a series of things that our culture tends to find really important. All right, so let's try another one. Name 3 teachers who inspired you to achieve. 3 teachers who inspired you to achieve. Doesn't matter what age. 3 friends who have helped you through a hard time. 5 people who taught you something priceless. If you guys want a hint, right, Jesus could go in all these blanks, right? You could go ahead and sneak one in, right? 3 people who made you feel appreciated and special. 5 people with whom you enjoy spending time. 6 hero stories, right? Not the whole story, okay? But 6 hero stories that have inspired you, okay? So when I ask you these questions, generally the answers to the second set of questions come more easily, right? So what I'm trying to get you in on is I would seriously doubt if all those people who were so inspirational to you and contributed such value to your life were unethical people, right? Maybe they were, hopefully not. But there's a level of intangibles that I think we forget that comes into this play about ethics, right? It's a stiff term, it's a clinical term, like we don't care, we don't want to know about it or whatever. But it's actually way vital to how we serve people. Okay, so this next slide, I'm gonna tell you a little story. A middle manager, Carl, makes an appointment with his supervisor and executive officer, Brad, in his company. After greetings are exchanged, Carl explains that he has some troubling news. Showing irrefutable evidence, Carl explains that another manager that he has partnered with in a large project has not been following through with previously agreed upon commitments, which were clearly outlined and documented. Carl has tried personally going to the other team member to confront the issue. Not only is the team member unresponsive, but the other team member also keeps lying to other staff in relationship to their actual contribution to the project. Frustrated, Carl has come to seek resolution with his supervisor. After a few questions, Brad, supervisor, says, "Well, Carl, I think you should take the high road." Carl takes a few minutes to process this and says, "Okay, but are you going to have a similar conversation with the other team member so that we can get this project back on track?" Brad says, "What? No, God, no. I'm just going to have this chat with you, tell you to take the high road and just assume everything is fine." Carl, stunned, says, "Sir, don't you think that's an irresponsible and even dangerous approach?" Brad says, "Go to your room." Carl, completely confused, says, "Sir, I'm 28 years old." Brad, smiling a great big smile and surveying the rest of the room, even though there's no one in there but Carl and Brad, says, "Well, fine job today, team. Who's ready for a 3-hour lunch?" Right? Kind of funny, isn't it? Right? You made that up, Graham. No, I didn't. I actually got that from a presentation from a guy named Joshua Mock, who is the publisher for Harvard Business Review. Right? And so the moral of the story is simple. We can't expect others to take the high road while we're taking the low road. Right? Take the high road, brother, man, brother, son, Wody, son, high road. It's high, okay, well, how do I do, it's the high road, and you take it to somewhere. Right? Like when we say taking a high road, this means clear things, right? It means ethical principles, ethical practices, okay? Ethical principles help keep us on the high road while we encourage others to do the same, right? So that whole idea, right, again, Jesus had harsh rebukes for his disciples, but one of the things that really turned me on to the whole Jesus way of doing things was how he confronted hypocritical people, right? So that is totally the definition of hypocrisy, right? When we expect other people to take the high road while we are just down in the muck walking on the low road, right? It doesn't work that way. So for those of us that have responsibilities with something called budgets, right? Ooh. Right? So we all know that nonprofits are kind of a war of attrition, right? We really got to get in faith about this and learn to engage the enemy when it comes to finances, right? Because if our Father really is that rich, right, then we can totally get more resources than we have now. But I just want to give you a fact, okay? Companies that are dedicated to doing the right thing, have a written commitment to social responsibility, and act on it consistently are more profitable. Money, resources, the ones that don't, right? Those that have the ethics clearly outlined, right, we have said this to the public, right, and we are held accountable to these things. These people make more money, okay? So a couple of things that I think we're all aware of, but just as a healthy reminder, why people behave unethically, okay? So just doing what's most convenient, right? Just doing what's easy, right? Please don't make me do stuff, right? Like I don't want to. Please don't make me do things that I don't want to do. Right? Have to be done. Do what must be done to win. Right? And so I just use college football, right? Because it's in the air. But using this as an example, people have gotten a lot of trouble about this and really destroyed people's lives, right? By trying to get them to play for the course of one game and destroy their lives by injury for the rest. I mean, they're not going pro, and they haven't been really focusing on education all that much, and it can really destroy people, right? But the people responsible for those things, the desire is to win. Dadgummit, right? Right? We don't need to know anything else about whatever. I mean, is this ultimately going to get us to win? Right? And rationalize choices with relativism. So, basically the rules don't apply to me because I'm me. That's kind of at base level. That's what that is, right? It's why we covered boundaries first, right? And it's intentional the way that we design these things, right? Because boundaries before lunch, ethics after lunch. But we started strong with Pastor Mark, and we're gonna bring it home again. But when you can always tell when someone might really struggle with this or whatever. Again, to that whole idea, when someone sets a boundary in place, right? And then okay. How can I get out of doing this? Right? That's an indication that someone has a significant issue to work on, right? This whole idea that everything is relative. Some things are, but not everything is relative. All right? So basically, okay, we are going to go over some more mundane stuff. But basically, if you want to be an ethical person, right, I can give you one principle, okay? And this one principle will do it all, okay? I promise. The golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. King Jesus, right? You probably have heard that one before or whatever. Like, I thought we were going to talk about ethics. Like, thank you for this great revelation, Graham, that you have for today for us. But I mean, seriously, is there not more perfect picture of ethics, right? Treat people the way that you would want to be treated, right? This one guideline can govern all your ethical decision making. The first is the standard to follow ethics, and the second is the actual will to follow them out. This is the Josephine Institute of Ethics. Ethics is about how we meet the challenge of doing the right thing. Well, that will cost more than we want to pay, right? There is a cost to a lot of our decisions. Some of you guys were talking about that in talking about boundaries. What happens if we have to make a call and somebody might die from it? Scary stuff, right? But according to what God says in His Word, there's a right way to go about doing things and a wrong way to go about doing things, right? Okay, interesting, concept, this, right? Why will this work? And I know this is Christian, okay? So please don't go out of here. Graham said not Christian things. But when you look at all the major religions of the world, right? Most of the major groups of people, they have a similar principle based on this idea. Okay, I'm not going to list them all for whatever, but all the major people groups of the world, right? In other words, this is universally understood. Like, I'm going to treat people the way that I want to hurt them, That's the best way to make a decision, right? It's so simple, right? All people groups understand this. It's easy to understand. It's a win-win philosophy. So everybody winning, is doing the right thing, right? So if I'm treating you the way that I want to be treated, it's a win for both of us, right? And it's a compass when direction is needed. If we honestly don't know what to do, if we can take a step back and be like, how would I want to be treated in this situation, right? It's a good way to find where you are and where you need to go. Okay. Everyone's favorite subject, right? Me. Right? When we do counseling, right? People come to tell us about themselves, and if you've ever been to a therapist or whatever, but typically this is our favorite subject, right? I mean, why? It could be self-centeredness, it could be, but I mean, it's probably because this is the most information that we have is about us, right? So when you think about you, like, and what you want to be valued, right? You want to be considered as somebody that has intrinsic value, right? In other words, like you want people to view you the same lens that God does. Am I right? Right? Priceless, right? I was worthy enough for Jesus to die on the cross for me, right? That's how I want to be treated, right? I want to be appreciated. Right? I want someone to say something to me every once in a while besides all the stuff I do wrong. Right? And we have a high standard, right? Because of who we work for. I remember one time I was talking with my niece when she was very little, and she was like, Unky Gam, right? And she's like, Unky Gam, what do you do for work? And I was like, well, Savannah, I work for Jesus. And she was like, what's that like? And so I tried it. So she asked me, she's like, I bet is he like really scary? And I mean, he's like, no, he's actually, he's really good to work for. He treats us good or whatever. That makes sense. I'm like, okay, Savannah, but like we all work for Jesus, right? But is Jesus not appreciative of us? Of course he is, right? We want to be trusted, right? We want people to, for the love of God, like, please give me the benefit of the doubt. Like, man, I'm out here trying to make it same as you. Could you please trust me? Like, some of us have got work to do on lots of things, right? We all got to work on something. Pastor Mark talked about that quote from Michael Dye. We're all in recovery, right? And so a major shift that I'm trying to get people to get in on and get into alignment to when they move into the aftercare stages of our program. Like, okay, like the Mr. Mackey philosophy of drugs and alcohol, like drugs are bad. Okay, right, all right, we got that one, right? Nailed that one. But like you will be in continual recovery from sin, right? We all are, right? And so when we talk about recovery, we're not just talking about the golden ticket that you get at a graduation. We have those, right? I don't know if you do. All right. But we want people to consider us as trustworthy, right? We're all in recovery from something, right? And we want people to believe the best in us. We definitely want to be respected, right? I have noticed some differences in some things, and this may be just the area of town that I live in. But I have noticed some substantial differences from, say, Taco Bell and Chick-fil-A.
I was just having this conversation with the Lord yesterday.
Right? This is on our minds, right? Like where we go to eat food as far as, I mean, like what, like when Chick-fil-A is a little bit more pricey, right? It's a chicken sandwich, okay? Like some nuggets, okay, in a box, What are we paying for, though? We're paying for the service at Chick-fil-A, though, man. Like people are like, trying to like hop can I pray for you? Like, how are you? Like, welcome to Chick-fil-A, man. Like, just need some ranch, But we want, they respect people. Like leadership is part of their culture. Like they love people. Like, when you see some wisdom in a 15-year-old more than you see it, like, I'm just like amazed by these people. I'm like, dude, why did I not work for Chick-fil-A? How much trouble could I have stayed out of if I just worked at... Pastor Mark's back there laughing because he used to manage a Chick-fil-A. Now, is that not... Of course he did, right? We want to be understood, right? We're like, do you get me, right? Do you know where I'm coming from? Can you relate to my experience? Like when I feel things, do you feel the same things that I do, right? And don't take advantage of me, right? Don't take advantage of me. Don't take advantage of my grace. Don't take advantage of my trust. Don't take advantage of my resources, right? Not cool, right? We all know what that feels like, right? And so if we can really just kind of get into that spirit of things or whatever, that's really going to help us, okay? I told you, really super deep stuff, okay? So character, okay? And so, it seems like that we're always, in ministry talking about character, right? And because I think one of the things that we need to understand about how the way God works, right? And we know that the Holy Spirit, part of his thing that he does, right, is comfort us, right, when we're going through a hard time, right? He's the great comforter. But based upon the entirety of Scripture, okay, and like we talked about in the earlier presentation, just being able to study all of it, right? I still read Revelation. I don't claim to be an end times prophet or whatever. I don't know what's going on in that book, to be honest with you. But I read it, It seems like that God is more interested in my character development versus my personal comfort. I wish that wasn't true. Right? Because I have to be given, right, the opportunity to show good comfort in a hard circumstance. Am I right? Right, which means the hard circumstances have to be evident part of life, right? And this is how he works, right? So when we talk about character, okay, character is more than talk. Okay, Jesus, and let's not go too weird on this, okay? But Jesus said, listen, you could tell what a tree is by the fruit on the tree, right? It's an apple tree because it's got apples on it. It's an orange tree because it's got orange on it, right? What kind of vine is that? Well, it's got watermelons on it. I'd imagine that watermelons are part of the picture somehow, right? A person saying something but not living something, it's pretty obvious. Right, and one of the things that I think, right, maybe this is just me pretending I'm better than I am, but I think when I try to talk to participants, right, and I try to talk to them about authenticity, like that's something they just instantly get. You know what I mean? Like they just get, they understand about the problems most of the time, about just not being something that you say that you are, right? And that probably has a lot to do with the trauma that they suffered in life, right? But character is more than just talk, right? Talent is a gift, right? But character is a choice, okay? So John Maxwell tells this story, and if you listen to his stuff long ago, you'll probably hear it like 20 times because it's a great story and illustrates a powerful point. Now, John Maxwell is the person that has the influence of billions with B. Right? When you think about how many people that is, that's pretty crazy, okay? But back when it all started, when he was just a pastor of a church, a person that cared about him wanted to have a discussion with him about his gifts, right? Has him come to lunch and says, like, listen, John, I just want to say, about your gifts, they're wonderful. I mean, they are incredible. And people are going to call you amazing and just completely over the top because of your gifts. And John was like, yeah, friggin' A, and he goes, but we both know you're not. Right? And so, what? That took a direction for the worse. What is that guy saying there? What he's saying is, it's like your gifting because of your ability to do something by a gift doesn't necessarily mean that you have the foundation of character to sustain that gift over time. Right? So I believe, right, and if you don't have faith for this, you can borrow some of mine, but I believe that this is a room of exceptionally gifted people, right? I believe that we have incredible gifts. I believe that probably and this is just my theory, okay? You don't have to believe this to get into heaven or whatever. But I tell people that I serve an addiction, and just like you guys are some of the most powerful, anointed people that have ever walked the face of the earth, and that's the reason why the enemy is trying to kill you. Right? Because he knows that if you, as you already have, but just like the other people that we serve in addiction, if you ever taste and see that the Lord is good, man, it is on like Donkey Kong. Right? But that doesn't mean that, it's sometimes we have this attitude like, thanks for salvation, God, I'll be taking it from here. Like, what? Character is what brings lasting success with people. We talked about emotional intelligence, right? How people treat other people, right? Again, emotional intelligence, right? That's a character thing, okay? People cannot rise above the limitations of their character. I'm gonna brag on Reverend Lawrence Harris in the back. I was a student of his for a hot minute at the Foundry, and he was talking to us about lying to ourselves. Right? We have the ability to deceive ourselves, and quite convincingly sometimes. Right? And Rev simply says, make no mistake about it, your level of effectiveness cannot exceed that of your obedience. Dang it. Right? I thought I was doing good. Like, I'm showing for upper points at some time. Like, I'm going to find my keys now. I can dress correctly. People will let me come back into their homes. Like, come on, man. Okay, amen, right? All good things. But, like, we're never getting outside of this need to obey God, right? So a lot of times, we come to this issue of character when we want to understand everything, right, that there is to know. And that's the thing about God, right? Your understanding can wait, but your obedience is now, right? Character helps you maintain, and be held accountable to ethical decisions, right? So is it so much that we got to focus on the rule book, or is we got to focus on the character development, right? Yes, we are still talking about ethics, I promise. All right. Bad decisions leave scars, right? And it will cost you precious influence, okay? I love this. A father began teaching his son the consequences of bad decisions. Each time the boy made a poor decision, his father asked him to hammer a nail into a post. Each day that he made good choices, he was asked to remove a nail. In time, after much hammering and pulling of nails, there came a day when the wood was nail-free. But that's when the boy noticed that the wood was full of holes. Whoa, right? You really don't get a lot of opportunities to make unethical decisions, right? There's not a lot of givesies backsies for unethical decisions, right? And I think that has to do with the way God created influence to function, right? I'm not going to give you influence when you abuse it, right? 5 factors that tarnish the golden rule, so to speak, right? Pressure. Do I make rash emotional decisions? I'm going to go to Mexico. Why? I'm comfortable. Are you okay? No. Well, I'm going to go eat M&Ms. Why? Because I want to eat my feelings, right? Rash, emotional decisions, right? Again, just obviously, Pastor Mark has been a mentor of mine for a long time, and one of the things that he has been known to ask you if you develop a close relationship with him, do you think you're making the best decision right now? No, right? Are you in a space right now where you can actually make the best decision? It's like pounding M&Ms. No, right? Do you make rational, emotional decisions? Do you compromise the truth, right? Is the Word of God negotiable to you, right? Not me, God, right? Surely not me. Take shortcuts, keep commitments, bow to others' opinions, God forbid, right? Make promises that can't be kept, right? See, we just spent some time talking about how we want to be treated, right? Do you want someone to make rash emotional decisions about you? Do you want someone to lie to you? Do you want someone to take shortcuts with you? Do you want someone to just blow their commitments that they make to you every time that they see you? Do you want those opinions to affect you? Do you want people to make promises and never follow through with them? Of course you don't, right? So again, it's back to this idea of how what I do affects other people. Pleasure. Pleasure is a terrible master, folks. Terrible master. Okay. Pleasure absent of God is fleeting. Okay. You guys probably have heard the statement before, but sin seems good for a time, right? Seems pleasurable for a time, but in the end, it ends up murdering you, right? That's the New Grammy International Translation, right? So things that tempt easy pleasure, they rarely deliver, right? So there's again back to this idea of the enemy being a relentless negotiator, right? And like, hey, this will help you out, right? When it says that he appears to people as an angel of light, I mean, like he will dress that up and make it look sexy. You know what I mean? Like, you want this and you want it so bad. Everything that you want is in this thing if you just take it, right? And you know, like we're all in you know, woosah places this morning or whatever, right? But you know, when stress gets hard, I mean, we make dumb decisions sometimes. The disciplined person is the person who can do what needs to be done when it needs to be done. Okay, we harp on this word discipleship, right? You know, we can do what needs to be done because we've been disciplined to do the right thing. Okay, power. Love this quote. Having power is like drinking salt water. The more you have, the thirstier you become. Okay? I would encourage you not to make decisions solely based upon whether or not it's going to give you more power. Right? Don't do that. Okay? You know, sometimes, you know, it says, humble yourself under the mighty hand of God, and he will exalt you in due time, right? You will get power and influence if you do things God's way in his timing, right? But just for the sake of doing things for power, right, it's never going to be enough. There's a video, and I thought about doing it on this, but then I decided against it. But there's this, if you ever want something interesting to watch on YouTube, maybe you're in a doctor's office or something, but it's this YouTube channel called Full of Eyes, and basically this guy has these incredibly passionate artistic renditions of Scripture. But there's this one where this person is basically taped to this idol, bolted to this idol. These things are coming into his eyes, his nose, his mouth, his ears, and there's this song playing, and it says that, you know, if I live so long that I walk the entire earth till my shoes fill with blood, right? It's not enough. If I, you know, was able to build a palace of sin and fulfill my every desire, it's not enough, right? And so it goes on and on these extreme things that sometimes live in the darkness of people's hearts. But the point of the song is that it's not enough. It never will be enough. See, everybody has a God-sized hole running through the middle of them, and God is the only one that's big enough to fill it, right? The reception of power, right? The abuse of power or the loss of power. We do dumb decisions when we put things in these terms, right? When we think someone is going to take power away from us, right? Might be tempted to behave unethically, okay? Whoops. Pride. God forbid. You know, Pastor Mark has an excellent teaching that he's been coaching us lately in the Foundry's weekly counseling meeting, talking about faith, right? And he, you know, it's a pretty dramatic teaching. It's pretty in your face. It's pretty convicting, right? Which we just talked about as a healthy thing. But you know, he makes this point, like, God forbid that those of us that have been going to church for however long should ever be wrong about anything that has to do with the Bible, you know? And so we're all like, Pastor Mark's like, hey, you guys still with me? You guys still listening? Hello, you know. Like, so, you know, just because we've been doing this for a long time doesn't mean that we're not capable of making a mistake, right? So we're never going to step out the need for humility, folks. God opposes proud people, right? You know, Paul says this. It is a terrible thing to fall into the hands of the living God, right? It's scary. Right? So you think about that statement coupled with God opposing proud people, you know, we have enough of issues to worry about. I don't think I need God working against me. You know what I mean? Like, if I'm trying to succeed or something, I really don't want God against me, right? Pride goes right before destruction. Disgrace actually falls from pride. Pride creates conflictual environments, right? When everybody's prideful, then nobody can say, I'm sorry. Right? God forbid that we have to say that I'm sorry, right? Those are probably the two of the most powerful words I learned in my first year of marriage, right? You know, I'm sure a lot of you guys are all like, "Oh, bless him," you know, because we can be dumb, right? We have these romanticized fantasies of what marriage is going to be like, and then we get married, and right, and we're like, "Okay, I forgot that I needed God. Please help me," right? You know, and so you know, it's just the way the way that it works. But like, if you're prideful, if you are above an apology, like, just count on being on a fight with everybody. Count on your life being full of drama and just useless time vampiring nonsense, right? Pride lowers people below their God-given purpose, right? That's not a place that anybody wants to be. Okay, priorities. So again, you know, sometimes people pay a tremendous amount of money for time management training, right? if I was to take my watch off and hand it to anybody in the audience and be like, manage this time, it's going to keep going the way that it's always gone, right, until basically God says no more time, right? You can't actually manage time, but you can manage your priorities, right? In other words, you can get into the flow of time and make time start working for you. And in God, with His infinite grace, we know that He will redeem the time, right? Things that you have lost because of your poor management of priorities, God will give you back what you lost in that time, right? But do you know what your personal priorities are? Do you have them listed, right? And like, oh yeah, I know them. What are they? Things. Go to work, not get fired, feed children, right? Like when you talk about personal priorities, as far as getting into alignment of Word of God, there are things that we can do more in that area, okay? Things that matter most must never be at the mercy of things that matter least, okay? How do we create golden opportunities, right? How do we create these opportunities to make good ethical decisions? One thing we got to do is we got to start taking responsibility for the decisions that we make, right? Again, a good healthy boundary is no one else is responsible for us but us, right? And it's nobody else's fault if we make a bad decision. Okay, it's not, right? We could have been influenced, but ultimately that is on us, okay? Develop personal discipline. Again, another shameless plug for discipleship counselor training course, right? Wednesday from 5 to 7. It's free. You can check it out on Facebook, or, Pastor Mark will mail you the CDs. Pastor Mark, how long have you been teaching that class? 14 years?
I think this is, 14 years.
Okay, so 14 years worth of content that he has saved, right? If you want to develop discipline in a way that you know us and trust us, that's an excellent place to start, right? Are you aware of your weaknesses? I have no weaknesses. I can tell you which one is right now, right? Sometimes we need to just be aware of our role. That's why diverse teams make such powerful things, right? Because where I am weak, you can be strong, and vice versa, right? But all people have weaknesses, right? Even John Maxwell, right? John Maxwell said very early on, because he went to ministry school, and they taught him about counseling, and guess what? He's absolutely terrible at counseling, right? So he had to basically form up a new paradigm for where he could be valuable, right? Again, align your priorities with your values. If you don't know what your values are, how are you going to align priorities with them? Two of mine, which makes sense because of what I do, but integrity and accountability, right? And I have a little thing. This is not something you have to do. I'm just telling you what I do. But I have a little journal, and when I say a journal, I don't mean a diary, right? If you have a diary, good for you. But I don't, like today, I went to the outreach and I had pizza. That's what I mean, okay? So at the end of every day, I reflect on how I've leaned into my values. Like how did I do what I'm committed to doing, right? Quickly confess wrongdoings and ask for forgiveness. I don't know if you've ever experienced this before, but I have been super, whoa, mad at somebody. Maybe I'm the only, maybe I'm like an alien or something, right? Okay, I'm sure you've never been mad at anyone. But, someone really, looking me in the, but they got me eye level, and they look at me and they say, I blew it. I'm sorry. Will you forgive me? Yeah, I love you. Come here. So that is such a powerful thing to say, right? Don't assume forgiveness is happened, folks. Your relationships are too important for that, right? It's a very powerful thing when you can just be humble enough to ask somebody I'm sorry, please forgive me, right? Take extra care with finances, okay? So, is there anything more stressful than finances? Right? Again, I have no children, so just wait, But is there anything that we hear more about in ministry and about the limitations that we're trying to do than finances? Okay. But here's the thing, okay, and we're not going to each individual's bank websites and just put everybody out on Front Street. But how are we supposed to encourage people in stewardship when we can't steward our own resources? right? Again, I'm believing that I am in a room of super gifted people, right? But I'm going to use Eddie as an example. Eddie, and I do too, just not that much. But Eddie has to plan for a certain time of year because his wife's birthday falls during the Christmas season, right? And someone was remarking on this, and I'm not going to say how much it is, but a very large amount of money that he gets by putting it back every year. And this person was really surprised, right? They're like, you save this amount of money? And Eddie, just, I have to, right? That's his mindset, though, right? That's a boundary. That's how he's taking extra care of like, if I don't do this, then I can't bless my wife and do the things that I want to do for Christmas and all that other kind of stuff, right? And so he gave that other person some advice. It was good talk, right? Now, this one right here, okay? A sister and I were just talking about this. I remember one time I was listening to someone, and I don't mean any judgment, y'all, because sometimes we're at the mercy of people who lead us and coach us, and sometimes we don't get good information, okay? Case in point. But I was listening to this person talk, and they said that my family won't speak to me anymore because I've been ministering. Guys, that ain't no ministry I've ever heard of. Right, and we all have so much to do, and God has called us to do so much, right? And we have these incredibly packed agendas, right? And not to mention that people just like are need machines, like, like, give me your happies, take your happies and put them in my chest, right? And it just feels draining, right? This is the world that we live in, right? And we're tired, like, God help me, right? But like, these priorities around our families, okay? And I'll tell you something, a little secret from the clinical world, okay? We know for a certainty, right? Again, I'm not going to talk about research stuff because it'll be like, oh God, no, okay? But we know for a certainty that there is a type of therapy, okay? It's called family therapy. Whoa, okay. Family therapy, that if we get their family relationships improving, right, and we can get them speaking again, and we can get them spending time together, then we see symptom reduction in the most extreme things. I'm talking about the scary ones too, like borderline personality disorder, schizophrenia, right, bipolar disorder, and these people get better. Like, why is that? Right, because God created families, right, to be our first small group, so to speak, right? And not all the time, right? I have to keep boundaries up with my dad, right? Because amen, right? But I'm not going to put my work ahead of him. Okay, so he's got a time slot every week where I am not doing things when he calls, right? And it takes you get what I'm saying, all right? Place a high value on people, right? And we have some of those people, like whenever they get around us, like it's just like, oh man, it's like someone standing next to us and they're like, and I think that's a natural thing or whatever, because there are things that are not attractive, there are things that are irksome, if you will, or whatever. But overall, we got to just place a high value on people. Like, people matter. Right? We are in a people business. Our Father's kingdom is a people business. And business is good, right? Business is very good, right? But we can I do this kingdom of God thing without people? No, because it's built on relationships, right? Kingdom of God is built on relationships, right? So I'm gonna give you a couple of things, right? These are blessed rules, right? How to make golden decisions. Treat people better than they treat you. Right, and so this is just kind of red letter stuff, but I think Jesus was the most ethical person that ever lived. Okay, if I'm wrong about that, I guess I'll have to apologize to him one day when I see him. But I don't think I'm wrong. All right, people would be nice just to people that were nice to them, and Jesus' attitude about that was basically whoop-de-doo. Right? He said, aren't even the pagans, right? And what that means is, aren't even the people that don't know God nice to people that are nice to them? I'm holding you to a whole other level of existence here, right? Let's not forget how I found you, Simon the tax collector, right? Or Matthew the tax collector, or you fishermen that stink, and everything that came out of your mouth was a cuss word, right? One time, Jesus was, a little history, okay? Jesus was walking to Jerusalem, and if the Samaritans were in a good mood, right, you could pass through Samaria and take the shortcut, right? And in this particular day, they were not in a good mood because they were kind of at each other's throats, like in that time of history, right? And so, access denied. You got to go around, right? And so the disciples, and it says disciples, not just one, right? We could try to single one nose. Disciples, plural. Like, let's just call down Elijah fire and burn them all out. And Jesus is like, what? And he says this he says something very clearly, and I think it's all important for us to understand. He says, you don't know what spirit you're of. That ain't the Holy Spirit, right? It's spiritual, but it definitely ain't the Spirit of God on you. Fire the whole country? Walk the second mile, okay? Now, another history thing. You probably know this because I know I'm in rooms of people that have been doing ministry for decades, okay? But the second mile, this is more than, the difference between extraordinary and ordinary is just that little extra. No. There was a Roman law. It's basically, more or less the second mile law. Okay, and I imagine the police, right, just pulling up next to you and just emptied all of their stuff out of the trunk and said, "Carry this crap for a mile, and if you don't do it, I'm just going to shoot you and lead you to bleed out in the road." Right? Well, that seems pretty extreme. Yeah, it was. Right? That's what the Roman soldiers would do. They were tired from moving from one battle to the other. That's pretty much all they did. And so, carry my crap for a mile, right? And if you didn't, they would run you through with the sword and just let you bleed out, and nobody would say anything, right? It was like, that's the law, okay? Jesus tells that group of people that is under Roman occupation to go the second mile. Oh. Dang, that is over the top, Jesus. It's because our God is over the top, all right? Help people who can't help you, right? Like, okay, I with the people thing or whatever, but okay, seriously though, you won't be getting anything out of this. Oh. Don't know that I'm invested now. Right? That's not grace. Right? Do right when it feels natural to do wrong, right? Like my feelings in this situation are telling me to punch this guy in the face, right? I'm going to give you some help and tell you that those emotions are not based upon the truth of the Word of God, right? Don't push that person in the face, okay? We're going to have these feelings, right, this gravitational pull to do some wrong things every once in a while, okay? Do it right anyway. Okay, keep promises even when it hurts. Okay, Chris was talking about this, right? Keeping the promise, right? If I made a commitment to you that you would suffer this consequence if you made this decision, then I got to enforce that consequence, right? It's gonna hurt me, right? When you enforce boundaries, it's kind of like a train wreck, is it not? Right? It's bad, right? It looks bad, it feels bad, and we got to keep those promises anyway. Okay, the platinum rule. Now, John Maxwell, and I think this could come back to bite us if we're not careful in the wisdom in this. But the golden rule is treat others as you want to be treated. But the platinum rule says treat people the way that they want to be treated, right? I know that's kind of like, but I think it's an important distinction to make because it takes you out of the equation, right? It really does. Okay, all right. So there is a resource in your session. Some of you guys might never heard a presentation or anything on ethics. I'm not going to read you every word, but I just wanted you to look at this other page. All right. So sometimes you will know, right, with a moral certainty that you have got into a place where you literally don't know what to do. Okay, I have never encountered this situation. I'm asking somebody about it, and they told me to take the high road. I don't know. They didn't give me any other context other than taking the high road, and then they left, right? So this is a handy way, a little step-by-step process that I'm just going to kind of walk you through. Sometimes what you think is the problem is not the problem. Right? Is the problem with addiction the fact that they are sick because of drug use, or is it other things? Right. All right. So sometimes what you feel like is the ethical dilemma, that's maybe not the problem in and of itself. Clearly define what the problem is. Right now, I'm going to go through something here in a second, but there is a code of ethics to whatever you do in a minute, and I'll show it to you. Okay, but there's a set of written principles, right? You might have heard of this thing called the Bible, right? I would suggest that you apply that first, right? And if anything else that's unclear after that, right, use one of these. So it talks about the dimensions of the dilemma, right? So how can I make this decision by myself? Like, how can I not cause harm, right? What's the justice behind this? All these things, okay? Fourth thing is that you want to actually, like, how many different options do I have in this situation, right? Good options, not bad ones, right? Consider potential consequences of each course if you go through with it. Right, and then evaluate the course that you've actually selected before you do it, right? Consider the justice, right? Consider the publicity, right? Consider what might happen if you make this decision and somebody, a reporter gets your story on the 11 o'clock news, right? And consider universality, right? Assess whether you could recommend the same course of action to another person in the same circumstance, right? Don't do something that you're not willing to coach somebody else on doing. Okay, so there's that. All right, so we have a code for that. That's the blank inside on the little part of the agenda. All right, so American Counseling Association, Christian Counselor Association, the National Association of Evangelicals, American Business Association, the American Medical Association, the National Council for Nonprofits. Okay, so I have these up here, and like, oh my God, is he really about to read the code of ethics to us? No, I'm not. Okay, I'm just gonna show you. Okay, and Brandon can appreciate this. So I have a clinician's license. Okay, and they have the power, should I do something sketchball, right, to report me to the board for my and I could lose my license for that, right? And so this is just something that governs my personal ethics. Okay. Oh, you're clinical stuff. I don't want to know about. Okay. Christian counselor code of ethics, right? Out of the three codes of ethics that I have, this one is the thickest. Oh. Right? The thickest code of ethics. And the reason they say the length of the code is because the people that write this, and it's published on their website, you go check it out for yourself. The reason they publish this is because they say that Christians are held to a higher standard, right? So they got more rules to follow. Okay? I think that's pretty deep, that. Okay? So, I do want to go over this one thing, because as we were talking about this, there seems to be some confusion about ultimately what our obligations are in some of these really hairy situations. Okay, so I want to talk to you about mandated reporting. Okay, every person in this room is responsible for mandated reporting. Okay. Alabama code, okay? So infants and incompetence, and that could include people that can't decide things for themselves. It could include elderly people, okay? All hospitals, this is copied and pasted from the law, okay? All hospitals, clinics, sanitariums, doctors, physicians, surgeons, medical examiners, coroners, dentists, osteopaths, optometrists, chiropractors, podiatrists, physical therapists, nurses, public and private K-12 employees, school teachers and officials, peace officers, law enforcement officials, pharmacists, social workers, daycare workers or employees, mental health professionals, employees of public and private institutions of post-secondary and higher education, members of the clergy, as defined by Rule 505. Any other person called upon to render aid, or, if you're called upon to render aid, right, this is you, okay? Or medical assistance to any child or any incompetent person when said is known or suspected to be a victim of abuse or neglect shall be required to report orally either by telephone or direct communication immediately, and shall be followed by a written report to a duly constituted authority, right? Now, I will tell you something that will help you here, probably alleviate the anxiety. Your job is to report, not to investigate. They will do that, right? If you're suspected of something or whatever, it is your responsibility to report child abuse and abuse of the elderly, okay? It's also your responsibility to report neglect of children and neglect of the elderly, right? Hopefully when they investigate the situation, right, all was good, and it was just one of those things, right? But when you think about these things, these are things that you are responsible for, okay? This also includes violent crimes and suicide. Okay, some of you guys were here for the suicide training that we did, but if you suspect someone of actually going to do something violent to someone, or they're, in other words, do harm to themselves or someone else, you've got to report that, okay? If you have any questions about that, we'll be happy to walk you through that process. But mandated reporting means that you have a mandate to do that. It is required by law to do that. In other words, if someone tells you something that leads to a crime where people have hurt, and they come back to you and asked if that happened, and you said, yeah, I didn't say anything about it, guess who's going to jail? You, right? Just FYI, okay? So food for thought, all right? So again, back to this idea of ethics, okay, and this is where we'll land. Okay, some of the things that we think are so important, all right. In 1923, a group of men met at the Edgewater Beach Hotel in Chicago. At the time, they were some of the wealthiest and most powerful people in the world. Combined, they had more money than the U.S. Treasury. Okay, this is in the 20s. Okay, this is not 2019. All right, but with all that gold, what became of these people, you might wonder. Okay, Charles Schwab, president of the largest independent steel company, died broke. Arthur Cutton, greatest of all the wheat speculators, died away from home, bankrupt. Richard Whitney, president of the New York Stock Exchange, died just after release from Sing Sing prison. Albert Fall, member of the U.S. President's cabinet, was pardoned from prison so that he could die at home. Jess Livermore, greatest bear on Wall Street, committed suicide. Leon Fraser, president of the Bank of the International Settlements, committed suicide. Ivor Kruger, head of the world's greatest monopoly, committed suicide. It's not about the money, folks. It's not about the stuff. It's not about the money. See, there are things, right? I love one of the verses in the Message translation. It says, "Blessed are those." This is the translation of the Beatitudes. But blessed are those who have discovered that God is all they have, because that's when they find themselves the proud owners of everything that can't be bought. Right? Yeah, I wish I could copyright that. That wasn't me, right? It's in the Bible. Okay? But I just want you guys to be encouraged, right? Remember that bad decisions will make holes, right? It will cost you precious resources and influence on people that you're trying to serve, right? And there is, more than likely, a code, a set of standards written down for you to follow. Should I give cash directly to program participants? No. Should I provide personal transportation with program participants in my personal vehicle? No. Right? I mean, it's fine. We're all among friends. Nobody's going to report you or whatever. So we got to get on these things, right? Can I do my job without documentation? No. If you don't document it, it didn't happen, right? As far as the courts are concerned, and I'm going to tell you something. When it comes to a lawyer, and my parents are lawyers, okay, but when it comes to a lawyer working a case in the sense of actually winning that case, it comes to finance, they don't care about your feelings. If the law is broken, they're going to tag you on it, and somebody's going to have to pay the piper on that. Okay, so please, do some homework, do what's known as due diligence, and if you ever need any help, right, you could use this decision-making tree, or you could ask for help for any of your brothers and sisters in this organization. Right, you're not alone ever in one of those bad decisions. All right, so you can go for the gold, or you can go for the golden rule. It's really up to you. All right, so thank you. We made it through both boundaries and ethics, and nobody died, right?